In this video, I'll be going over some of my favorite one-year transformations in classic physique history. I'm sure there are some great transformations that won't be on this list, but I picked my 10 favorites from the division's history. Please let me know if there are any that you think should be on the list, and remember, this is more so my opinion, rather than a ranking or objective-based video. Alright, I actually lied. I have 11 transformations, but I'll make the first one quick, even though it honestly deserves just as much credit as the rest. Matt Grego went from 16th place at the 2023 Olympia to cracking the top 10 in 2024, and the improvements he made were undeniable. He came in with way more size, and improved upon shape, and much sharper condition. What really stood out to me was how he went from just another solid classic competitor to someone who now looks like a real threat. The muscle maturity, the presence, the polish, it all leveled up. So yeah, even though this one's quick, it was a huge leap for Matt, and easily is one of the most impressive transformations of the year, and I do wish I had a bit more time, but unfortunately I'm in a rush. Starting off this list is Logan Franklin, a competitor who has always had the look of a classic physique champion, the structure, the lines, and the posing that takes you straight back to the golden era. But for years, there was always one thing holding him back: condition. Show after show after show, it seemed like Logan had all the tools except that next level sharpness that he needed to stand out in the top ranks. He looked great, but never quite dangerous. That was the exact case at the 2024 Olympia, where he placed 12th. Despite his flow and presentation, he simply did not have the detail or tightness to hang with the best in the world. But then came the 2025 Arnold, and Logan finally put it all together. He brought a completely different level of sharpness, with deep separation, more vascularity, and a crisper look that we had never seen from him before. His legs looked fuller and simultaneously more detailed, and for once his amazing posing actually highlighted a complete physique instead of covering up his weaknesses. He moved all the way up to second, beating multiple top Olympia competitors and nearly taking the win against Mike Somerfeld. Logan's transformation is important because it showed that refinement and top-tier condition really are all the difference makers in classic physique. It was not about bulking up or reinventing the wheel, it was about showing up peeled and very polished. For someone who is seen as all style and not enough substance, this was the moment that he proved he could back all of his talk up. And for fans of the division, it reminded us that shape and structure simply mean nothing if you cannot bring the condition to match. Next up is Wesley Vissers, a guy who has always had all the tools: towering height, wide shoulders, crazy taper, and some of the best truly classic aesthetics. On paper, he looks like a threat to win any show, but for years, Wesley struggled to break into those top callouts. The main issue was that he could never seem to dial in the right combination of condition as well as timing. Either he would come in too flat, or he would miss the mark on sharpness, and when you are standing next to the best in the world, that margin of error is really everything. At the 2023 Olympia, he took 7th place, which was respectable, but it still felt underwhelming for someone with all the potential that he had. Then 2024 came, and Wesley finally figured it out. At both the Arnold Classic Ohio and the UK, he showed up absolutely peeled, with perfect fullness and tightness across every muscle. His legs were sharper, his midsection was more controlled, and his signature taper looked even crazier because of how well conditioned he was. For once, nothing was holding him back, and the result was 2 major wins back to back. What makes Wesley's transformation so significant is that it was not about changing his physique. Similar to Logan, he needed to unlock that next level of condition. He had the mass and the shape all along, but this was the year he finally peaked perfectly. And for fans who had been waiting to see Wesley deliver, this felt like a long overdue redemption. And for the rest of the division, it was a wake-up call. When Wesley nails his prep, there are simply not many competitors who can stand toe-to-toe. Now let's talk about Chris Bumpstead. Yes, he won the Olympia in both 2019 and 2020, but do not let that make you think that there was not a transformation. In fact, the jump he made between those 2 years might be the most impressive single-year improvement in classic physique history. He kept the same signature condition and aesthetics as well, but added a ridiculous amount of size, and most importantly, he brought up his biggest weakness, his back. In 2019, Sebum won his first Olympia title in what was a close and somewhat debatable battle between him and Brienne Aninsley. He had the shape, the flow, and that classic look, but there were still clear areas that needed a lot of work. His back poses especially looked shallow next to competitors like Brienne. Fast forward to 2020 though, and Chris came back with a back that looked like it belonged to a completely different person. His lats were wider, his traps thicker, and his rear double pose went from a liability to a big weapon. On top of that, he added fullness in the chest, arms, and legs without sacrificing any of his trademark detail or condition or lines. The 2020 Olympia was not just a title defense, it was a true statement. Chris went from a guy who, barely edged out a win to someone who left absolutely no doubt. That year marked the beginning of his true dominance in my own opinion, and it showcased just how dangerous he could be when he not only nails his condition, but also pushes for more size. This transformation solidified him as the face of the division, and arguably set a new standard for what a classic physique champion was. Also, if you guys are enjoying the video so far, a like and sub would really be awesome, as it helps out the channel tremendously. Up next is Ers Kalisinski, one of the youngest and most promising stars in classic physique, but also one of the most scrutinized. In 2023, Ers placed third at the Olympia, but let's be honest, a lot of people felt like that spot was a bit of a gift. His shape and flow were undeniable, but his arms were undersized, and he did not have the fullness or muscularity to match someone like Raone or Chris. He looked a bit flat in my own opinion, and the back poses exposed some clear weaknesses. That performance left a lot of fans wondering if he had hit his ceiling. Then came 2024, and Ers answered every single doubt. After some pretty underwhelming showings at both Arnold Classics, where he was off his usual mark, expectations for the Olympia were not really sky high. But when he stepped on that Olympia stage, it was a different story. Ers came in bigger, fuller, and sharper than we had ever seen him. His arms, which were his biggest weakness, had noticeably improved. His back even had more detail and pop. And he still managed to hold on to all the things that made him so special. The lines, the vacuum, the flow, while actually improving his size and presentation. Even though he placed third again, this time there was no doubt about it. He earned that spot, and some fans even argued that he could have placed higher. That kind of transformation, not just physically, but in how people perceive you, is massive. Ers went from a guy people thought as being protected by the judges to someone who silenced all the critics and proved he is here to fight for that title. And the scary part is that he's still getting better. Coming in next is Matus Managate, one of the fastest rising talents in classic physique. He only turned pro in 2023, I think, but by the time the 2024 Olympia rolled around, he'd already made a name for himself, landing a top 10 spot in his Olympia debut with a very complete, well-rounded physique that caught everyone's attention. And the craziest part is that he's just getting started as well. Between 2023 and 2024, Matus packed on quality size across his entire frame. His chest, arms, and legs, they all came up noticeably, but what really stood out was how he maintained that crisp, very symmetrical shape while growing. His flow, proportions, and classic lines are about as close to ideal as it gets. He is still not the biggest or most conditioned guy, and that makes his 9th place finish at the Olympia even more impressive. He placed above several bigger names just by being more structurally gifted and well balanced from head to toe. Matthias's transformation is important because it's not just about what he has already achieved, it's about what's coming. He placed top 10 at the Olympia without being maxed out on size or condition. Just imagine what happens when he does bring that finished look. He might already have the best structure in the division, and if he keeps making these improvements like he did in the past year, it is only a matter of time before he's pushing for a top 5 or even higher placing. This transformation was simply just the beginning. This next transformation technically spans 2 years, but it is way too good to leave off the list. Terrence Ruffin placed 9th at the 2018 Mr. Olympia, a result that felt disappointing for someone with his potential. He had the shape, the posing, and really everything else, but the overall package was not competitive enough at the time, probably because he wasn't big enough. Then in 2019, despite being qualified, he sat out the Olympia entirely. So when he returned to the big stage in 2020, no one really knew what to expect. And what we got was one of the cleanest, most refined packages in classic physique history. Terrence came back bigger, sharper, and far more polished. His legs were denser, his back had more detail, and his overall flow was much smoother. On top of that, he brought arguably the best posing that we had seen in the division, a perfect mix of control, creativity, and classical aesthetics. He ended up placing second, right behind Chris Bumpstead, and ahead of everyone else, including previous Olympia champions and top contenders. What makes Terrence's transformation so impactful, though, is the complete turnaround, not just in the physique, but in the confidence and presentation. He went from being overlooked to being a runner-up at the biggest show in the sport. Even though there was a year gap, the improvement from 2018 to 2020 was so massive and so decisive that it still stands as one of the greatest comeback stories in the division. This was the moment where Terrence proved that he belonged at the very top, not just as a great poser, but as a legitimate threat. Moving on, let's talk about Brienne Aninsley's rise from 4th place in 2016 to winning the Olympia in 2017, and this is definitely one of the most defining transformations in the division. Back in 2016, the division was definitely still finding its identity, and the judging felt a bit undecided. Brienne had a great physique even then, but it was not entirely clear what the judges were looking for. He placed 4th, and while it was a strong showing, it did leave a lot of people wondering if he would ever break through. Then 2017 came around, and Brienne made it impossible to deny him. He showed up with one of the most complete looks we had seen up until that point. His back poses were dominant, with incredible width and detail. His arms were perfectly shaped and full, his midsection was tight and controlled, and his legs matched up with great balance. On top of that, he posed with confidence and a lot of precision as well, showing every strength without giving the judges a reason to nitpick. This was not just a competitor showing improvement, this was someone stepping up and becoming that new standard. What makes this transformation so impressive to me is the shift in how the division was judged because of it. In 2016, the judges were still figuring things out, but in 2017, Brienne made the decision very easy. He defined what a classic physique champion was, not just in terms of size and condition, but in completeness, symmetry, and stage presence. His transformation was not just physical, it was about taking control of the narrative and becoming the model everyone else had to follow. Now, at first glance, Raone Dino placing second at both the 2022 and 23 Olympias might not really sound like a transformation, but the version of Raone we saw in 2023 was on an entirely different level. In 2022, he placed second to Chris Bumpstead, and while it was a big step up from his earlier showings, there was still a noticeable gap between them. Raone had all the potential, but he was not quite ready to challenge Chris head-on. After that show, though, he went back to work. He won the 2023 Arnold with ease, showing off a denser, more polished physique, and then he came back to the Olympia stage that year, and it was clear just how far he had come. His confidence was way up, his posing was more refined, and his physique, especially from behind, had taken a huge step forward. He was sharper, more muscular, and in the front and rear double, he actually pushed Chris harder than anyone had in years. It was no longer just about potential, he was now a legitimate threat. In my opinion, what makes Ramone's transformation so impressive is that it was not about changing placements, it was about closing that gap. He went from a distant second to a genuine contender, and he made Chris work for that win. This was the version of Raone that proved he could hang with the best in every single pose, and if he keeps progressing like he was in 2023, that classic physique title might be within reach at the 2025 Olympia. Next we have Mike Somerfeld, and this transformation might be the most shocking of all. In 2023, Mike placed 8th at the Mr. Olympia, which was a clear step down from his 5th place finish the year prior. He was still very impressive, great structure, crazy width, and one of the best backs in the division, but he did look a bit off. The sharpness was not really there, the muscle did not really pop, and on a stacked stage, he simply faded into the background. So when he came back in 2024, and shockingly took 2nd place, no one saw it coming. Mike brought a complete physique, one that was dense, full, and detailed from every angle. He was shredded to the bone, and he posed with a lot of presence, and this time he truly stood out. He arguably won key poses like the front double bicep and ab and thigh excluding the vacuum, and even in the rear double against Chris Bumpstead. His back was absolutely world class, and his structure was flowing perfectly with all the added density. For once, there were real conversations about whether or not Chris Bumpstead had actually been defeated. What makes Mike's transformation so remarkable is how he rebounded. A lot of guys dip in placings and stay stuck there, but Mike used it as fuel and came back better with a physique that was not just improved, it was Olympia title worthy. From being overlooked in 2023 to nearly upsetting the champ in 2024, this kind of leap deserves that kind of recognition. Rounding out the list is Jose Manuel, also known as Josema Beast, and this transformation was both unexpected and very strategic. In 2023, Jose was still competing in the open division, and while he looked very impressive at shows like the N Pro Spain, it was clear that he did not have the size to stand out against the true mass monsters. His conditioning was always spot on, and his density was insane for his age, but structurally he was getting outsized in the open division. So in 2024, he made the move to classic physique, and it turned out to be the perfect call. At just 21 or 22 years old, I'm not quite sure, he qualified for his very first classic physique Olympia and ended up taking that elusive spot just outside of that top 5. And honestly, you could make a real case that he deserved to be even higher. Jose brought extreme density, deep muscle separation, and next level condition, the kind of detail you normally only see from seasoned veterans. His legs were some of the best on stage from behind, and his back poses were very thick and refined. The only real knock is that he doesn't have the most traditionally classic shape, not the tightest waist in terms of width, and also not the cleanest X-frame because of his lackluster quads, which holds him back in a more aesthetic lineup. But even with that, Jose's transformation is massive. In 1 year, he went from a young, undersized open competitor to a top Olympia threat in classic. That kind of jump across divisions at his age with so much success is incredibly rare, and if this is what he's doing in his early 20s, who knows how far he can go. Well guys, that about does it for this video. Let me know in the comments down below your thoughts and opinions, as well as if there were any transformations I missed out on. With that being said, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching.